Celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.
Many thanks for joining us on Razep Africa this beautiful morning. As usual, I'm excited to be here and we are here again to give you update of what's going on across this beautiful continent of ours. Here on Razep Africa, it's our aim to ensure that the image that is often portrayed about this continent is different. You see the beauty, you see the potential, you see the energies, especially from our young people. You see the beauty in our arable land, you see the diversity and vibrant colors within the continent. And that's our aim. Innovations that we are trying every day to have within the continent. Good news, basically. And as you know, we start the show with the African News Update. We'll go for a short break. When I return from that quick short break, we'll get to the stories that are trending this morning across the continent. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.
Welcome back from that. Now we begin in Zimbabwe, where the rollout of a long-acting HIV prevention drug is now underway, offering fresh hope in the fight against new infections. Health officials have launched lenacapavir, a twice-yearly injectable drug that clinical trials show provides near total protection against HIV transmission. Zimbabwe is among the first African countries to introduce the drug, targeting high-risk groups, including sex workers, adolescent girls, young women, and pregnant breastfeeding mothers. The early phase is expected to benefit about 46,000 people across 26 sites, with support from the United States President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. That's the PEPFAR and the Global Fund. However, authorities have cautioned that while lenacapavir is being described as a potential game changer, funding constraints and fragile health systems could limit its impact. Zimbabwe continues to grapple with significant HIV infections, particularly among young women. who accounts for the majority of new cases in sub-Saharan Africa. Officials stress that the injection must complement, not replace, existing prevention tools such as condoms and oral PrEPs as the country seeks sustained long-term solutions. Now, that's a beautiful outcome of the fight or advocacy against HIV/AIDS, as we had recorded several deaths, especially across Africa. It's good that, we're seeing Zimbabwe take charge in this as an epicenter of HIV/AIDS for several years, and I'm happy that it's coming. A lot of conspiracy theorists would also ask if at this point, why Africa? Why are we starting from Africa? I hope clinical trials proper clinical trials have been done, and it's not in its pilot stage. And I'm happy that we would, for once, get some sort of solution to HIV/AIDS. It had devastated several families across Africa. So this is absolute good news. It's something I absolutely welcome, and I'm hoping above everything that we would not have infections like this with no treatment. I'm also hoping that when we talk about the drug that, the rollout of prevention drugs like this, we would be talking about malaria. That's what I'm trying to remember, about malaria as well, that has done so much havoc as well in affecting homes across these sub-Saharan tropical areas of Africa, especially, where it has killed more people than HIV/AIDS, really. And we've had this conversation severally where we said, is there an intentional? The West wants to give the impression that they are positioning to give aid to Africa. If you are intentional, can we do something about drugs, not just treatment drugs for malaria, but prevention, something that builds immunity. In that regard, we have also recorded the vaccines, but it targets only 0 to 5 year olds, while it builds immunity for those. What happens after you are 5 years old? What happened to the adults? What happened to pregnant women who unfortunately have to pass when malaria is not properly treated? And this is something we've been recording across board in Africa. So I'm hoping this rollout and this intensity in ensuring that we curb the spread of HIV/AIDS and treat it and prevent it. In this case, we also have something going on in the malaria outbreaks that happen across Africa. I always remember fondly a Senator Ned Nwoko, who one time was talking about a nationwide, really, but simultaneous nationwide malaria. I can't remember at the moment what he called it, but it was supposed to be all-round fumigation, where you fumigate across board. And what he had discovered was that he could get organic fumigation that did not affect humans or animals or plants, but just affected not just the adult mosquitoes, but also the larvae and the eggs and all that, so that there will be, for another 6 months, they will be unable to reproduce. And that was something I was hoping that the federal government would take seriously and champion immediately. But we did not see that happen, and that conversation is no more. But that is one of the many innovations that could come from Africa. It's one thing to say the president of the United States has launched, a targeted high-risk group, to ensure that we curb HIV in Africa. But there is an active and concerning number of HIV patients in America as well. Are we also having a pilot phase in America that is giving us this beautiful not vaccine now, drug in this case, to ensure that it does not spread even in America. I am quick, to ask why we are not having pharmaceuticals in our continent come up with drugs that affect us. And it's proven that the way drugs will interact with the black man is not the same as it would interact with the white man, considering, of course, not just the geographical location, but just what makes up the black man. So why are pharmacists, why are we not producing actively? Our government, I've also had a conversation with someone who swears that he did something about coronavirus. At the time we're discussing coronavirus, and there were indigenous pharmaceutical companies that had come up with what they thought would tackle coronavirus, considering a lot of things, the black man and the black man's DNA and the many other terms, medical terms that describes the black man, but that didn't see the light of day, as government, according to this allegedly, were stifling the activities of these local pharmaceutical companies. So I'm hoping that this United States President's emergency plan for AIDS relief would actually work, and if it does work, we see that it goes across Africa. We had recorded South Africa some time ago as the epicenter of HIV/AIDS, and I'm happy that if this goes well, it would go across board. 46,000 people across 26 sites. Okay, that's good enough, I guess, just for a pilot initiative. Let's see how moving forward we would have more in terms of more people have access to these drugs, and I'm hoping governments across Africa are positioning financially and budgeting for this drug, because it obviously affects several families and have for over years affected children as well. I commend those who work within the HIV and AIDS space, where they've been doing a lot in awareness, in taking up, ensuring that children no longer die with their parents, like we saw several years ago. It was really concerning at the time, but a lot has been done. Innovations have been brought into the fight against HIV, the awareness around HIV, the stigmatization that is often the case here in Africa, where several people were unable to even come out to admit that they have HIV, but we're beginning to see that is done with, and we no longer record such instances any longer. Now, moving away from the HIV story, a good one, we are now going to the fighting that has resumed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, despite a ceasefire proposed by Angola's President João Lourenço. Clashes between the Angolese army and the AFC M23 rebel group have reignited tensions, with both sides accusing each other of violating the truce. Kinshasa claims the rebels are attempting to strengthen their position during diplomatic negotiations, while M23 insists government forces initiated renewed hostility through air and ground offensives. As diplomatic efforts continue, civilians remain caught in the ceasefire. Families in Uvira and surrounding areas have once again fled their homes, describing repeated ceasefires that fail to deliver lasting peace. Civil society groups report fresh clashes involving allied militias, further complicating the security landscape. For residents, the renewed violence deepens uncertainty in a region that has endured decades of instability. That's a very unfortunate turn of events right there, where we are still recording fighting in Somalia, and it's quite unfortunate that in Congo rather, and it's quite unfortunate that we are recording this across board in pockets of places across Africa. the peace that we reported, the peace initiative that we reported not long ago, I'm unsure why there's still distrust between both parties, where it's almost as if one angle is talking about the rebels reigniting tensions, using the truce rather, to reignite tension. Meanwhile, Kinshasa at the other end claims that the government does not have a good enough or planned efforts really to see to the end of this. Again, when we talk about conflict across Africa, what we must bear in mind is not just the conflict between these two, the rebels, the M23, and government, but we are seeing a lot of people having to flee. Last week we recorded in Congo how we are recording famine in those areas. There's no access to water, and in Sudan as well, and Somalia, there's no access to water, there's no access to food and drugs. We are having more people being recorded, more children being recorded as malnourished. These are unfortunate consequences of conflicts such as this. So something really has to be done. What's happening to the African Union? There are blocs that ensure peace across Africa and ensure that conflicts like this do not further stretch the humanitarian issues we already face in democracies that work. So how can we ensure that we do more in getting these individuals peace? People are having to run from their homes. And when you look at Congo and you look at the natural resources that is in Congo, you ask yourself, is this intentional? Who is to benefit from all of this should Congo remain in conflict? Are there external factors that are helping to fuel this crisis? And if so, why can't we have Congolese people sitting in a table and decide that peace should reign within the continent? I know it's more complicated than sitting here to discuss how just stop fighting already, but we've seen it happen. It can happen when rebels and government come together for some sort of peace negotiations. Let's have other countries. Nigeria used to be leading in diplomatic peace negotiations like this. What is happening to stronger African countries? Our brothers are fighting. We should do something about it to ensure the end to this rift and this fight that has been happening, causing so much havoc in Congo. We've had several reports, which is very unfortunate at the moment. We are having women unable to have access to hospitals even when they have to give birth. According to, there's also a report that was talking about the mines in Congo. We cannot, unfortunately, discuss the happenings, the conflicts happening without discussing the mines and vaults. I mean, it just is an unfortunate instance where people are taking advantage of the conflict and ravaging the mines for gold and all that. It was recorded recently that the Central Bank of Congo will buy directly from state-owned DRC gold trading to boost economic sovereignty. That's good news there. The program, according to them, is supposed to strengthen the Congolese francs, diversify the central bank reserves, and formalize artisanal mining sector. Purchasing gold through a state channel is expected to reduce illicit flows and cut off funding for armed groups in conflict zones. That's another very beautiful initiative. However, the U.S. supports the initiative by providing technical guidance and encouraging transparency in the gold supply chain. Is that something to be happy about? Because the initiative, as the Democratic Republic of Congo navigates persistent insecurity in its eastern provinces, where the M23 rebel group control mineral-rich territories, and signals Kinshasa's growing confidence in its mineral resources as tools to stabilize Congo. We have reports, especially from the Bloomberg, this talking about the DRC Gold Trading SA will partner with the central bank to supply gold sourced from Congo's hand dog, meaning artisanal mining operations, as authorities seek, of course, to capitalize on the country's vast mineral wealth and elevated global prices. Very unfortunate happening in Congo right now, especially as it also has a vast mineral reserves. So it's unfortunate. I'm hoping that the truce will eventually work so that we would not have such activities any longer. Those conflicts, we must do away with it. And in Somalia, the United Nations World Food Programme has warned that life-saving food assistance could halt within weeks due to severe funding shortages. An estimated 4.4 million people face crisis-level hunger, with nearly 1 million experiencing extreme food insecurity. The WFP says assistance has already been scaled back dramatically from supporting 2.2 million people earlier this year to just over 600,000 as resources dwindle. The agency is urgently seeking $95 million to sustain operations through August, warning that the country risks sliding back into famine conditions similar to the crisis narrowly averted in 2022. Somalia declared a national drought emergency late last year following failed rainy seasons, and humanitarian officials say without immediate intervention, conditions could deteriorate rapidly. And while still in Somalia, of course, authorities have also said that they are willing to grant the United States access to strategic minerals and military facilities as part of renewed efforts to secure international recognition. The breakaway region, which declared independence from Somalia in 1991, says it possesses rare earth minerals, lithium and coltan, though independent verification remains limited. Officials have also suggested that cooperation with Washington could include mineral exploration, agreement, and potential security arrangement. However, Somalia's federal government has condemned moves towards recognition, describing them as violation of its territorial integrity. Analysts note Somaliland's strategic location along the Gulf of Aden may be a key factor in international interests, while officials in Hargeisa insist recognition is based on statehood rather than military calculations. The issue continues to heighten diplomatic sensitivity in the Horn of Africa. Very interesting outcome happening right there, because we are now going to see what Washington does. Is Washington going to join Somaliland with this new promise of having access to minerals, rare earth minerals? That often, unfortunately, usually is the attraction where you talk about the West and the interest in rare earth minerals. So the minister of the presidency says the exclusive rights offered to the U.S. are part of Somaliland's push for global recognition. Well, Somalia is prepared to grant the U.S. access to its mineral and military bases. According to, now quoting exactly what the minister said here, he says, "We are willing to give exclusive access to our minerals to the United States. Also, we are open to offer military bases to the United States." Kada Hussein Abdi, Minister of the Presidency, told the AFP News some time ago that, in his words exactly, we believe that we would agree on something with the United States. Israel became the only country in the world to recognize Somaliland's independence in December, something the territory has been seeking since declaring its autonomy from Somalia in 1991. The region ceded from Somalia during a civil war that followed the more than 2-decade hard-line rule of President Siad Barre, whose forces devastated the north. The U.S. has yet to signal a major shift on the question of Somaliland. It will be interesting to see if the U.S. will shift, because we've been having this conversation. It's of course allegedly and suggestive sometimes that this is what often push, and I think it's a bait sort of to say we have what you need. You want military bases across the world. We're giving you access to military base, and we also have rare earth minerals that I know you want. So I think they are trying to bait the U.S. and it's an exclusive. How interesting is that? It's an exclusive. Access, granting exclusive access just to the United States. In August of last year, the American President Donald Trump had previously lobbed insult at Somalia and President Hassan Mahmoud, suggesting he was preparing to move on the issue when asked about Somaliland during a White House conference. Somalia has denounced Israel's recognition. Somalia, rather, has denounced Israel's recognition as attack on its territorial integrity and unity, a position backed by most African and Arab leaders, and has urged Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to withdraw that recognition. Now everyone knows how close Netanyahu is with the U.S. president, so it will be interesting to see how that happens, but we also have recorded the hurling of insult that the president often, at a point, a lot of us who were watching commentators were also shocked. What do you have especially against Somalia? Are you there as a world leader to assist these people who are obviously needing some sort of big brother and all of that? But I do not expect too much from the West. I look inward all the time. What is the regional bloc, the regional leaders doing? The African Union, the ball always stops there to ensure that there is peace. Is there even the possibility of coming back together? If there's such a possibility, has it been explored? Is this what we should now expect in having them depart from Somalia? That's another question to be. But if they are happy with that, I'm not sure. A lot of people would say it's still one sovereignty. However, there are two different administrations. There are parallel leadership. There are parallel administration. Would this make Somalia stronger? That's still to be addressed. But above everything, we need AU to get in and see what they can do. I am not also saying that the delegations that are often sent from the African Union are not. I have not taken into cognizance. Of course, absolutely, we take into cognizance those peace delegations. However, it's obvious something is not being done right. If you ask the American president, he will say, "Let's push tariffs. Let's add trade tariffs." I don't think that often works, because look at what Canada is doing, trying to alienate itself from America. We do not want that. But how can the African Union, as a viable organization, ensure peace across Africa? That's a very important conversation, and I'm hoping that they are positioning better for this. We go for a short break. When we return, we have other stories that made news across African continent. We will be right back with more. This is still Razep Africa.
Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television. Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.
Welcome back to Razep Africa show this morning. Now, still on Somalia, United Nations World Food Program had warned, like I said earlier, that life-saving food assistance could halt within weeks due to severe funding shortages. An estimated 4.4 million people face crisis-level hunger. That is nearly 1 million people experiencing extreme food insecurity. That, unfortunately, is what is developing right now in Somalia, and something indeed has to be done. Africa, we have a strong economies within Africa. We need to be our brother's keeper. 4.4 million people experiencing crisis level hunger that we should not be able to. Africa is so blessed with arable land. This is a country that should feed the nation literally. If you go into the numbers, we have no business being hungry. But we also had recorded even in Nigeria here, we recorded very terrible statistics of Nigerians who are living in extreme poverty as well. And you ask yourself, how can this be? If only we had leadership direction that would ensure that no one goes hungry. And now imagine a crisis field, conflict areas. That is exactly what to expect when there is conflict in a country. You are unable to properly plan and have food initiatives or agricultural initiatives, and no one is willing really to invest in a country that is riddled with so much conflict. But then again, when you ask yourself, a country that is riddled with conflict, what are we doing? What are we doing, African brothers and sisters, to ensure we do not have this this unfortunate recording of 4.4 people? And the UN is telling, the UN World Food Program is telling you, because of the sparse support that's coming in, they are seeking $95 million to sustain operations through August. That's to say, beyond August, we are unsure what will happen there. So we need to be very intentional. We have to not just learn. African countries must do more in not just learning to feed themselves, but feed their brothers, especially those in conflict. I may be naive in my analysis, but I think we obviously must do something about it. We can't be recording people dying of starvation. We recorded this same kind of story last week, and we saw how bad it had gotten. Children are highly malnourished. For conflict areas where help cannot even get to. People are running away from their homes, their farms, and their means of livelihood. This is exactly what we are recording in Africa. And yet, we do all our best to make sure people also know that in spite of the recording of this unfortunate conflicts across Africa, we have good news. We have a lot of very important things happening, and I'm hoping that we supersede and go past these issues that we often face so badly. Okay, moving away from Somalia and turning to Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni has held talks with Sudan's Rapid Support Forces leader Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo in Entebbe, urging dialogue as the only viable path to ending Sudan's nearly 3-year civil war. Museveni, who has been tasked by the African Union to facilitate negotiations between Sudan's rival factions, emphasized the need for an African-led political solution. Dagalo acknowledged the worsening humanitarian crisis in Sudan, where repeated ceasefire attempts seems to have failed. However, Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has rejected proposals for a humanitarian truce unless the RSF withdraws from all captured areas, underscoring the deep division that continue to fuel one of the world's most severe conflicts. You must admit that President Museveni, 81 years old, criticized for his 7th time return in Uganda. Believe it or not, I am happy that the African Union sent him of all people, because he has age, he has experience, as he too has had a bit of sting with being in the military and all of that. So if there's anyone in Africa who should be able to reach this fighting factions, I think Museveni is your best bet. However, he must not be alone in this. And we are reading here now that the African Union had commissioned him to go ensure an end to Sudan's 3-year civil war. However, I would have hoped that he didn't go alone. We had other African leaders who are also championing this dialogue. I mean, why is the president of Nigeria, the president of South Africa, why are we not having more presidents lead in this? If we only understand how united we can be. When we talk about the conversations about the United States of Africa, that's what the kind of leadership I would expect, where you are not just going on your own. The African Union should have rallied more African leaders to reiterate the need for a truce, to reiterate the need to have peace once again. Sudan, just like Somalia, has been riddled with so much famine. We also recorded the malnutrition that what's going on there, especially for children who are unfortunately dying. That's how bad it is at the moment. So it is an emergency and it must be treated as such. He had no business, in my opinion, had no business going by himself. He's of course a strong leader across Africa. Why would he be seventh term? But he's a strong leader, and but it would have been good to have more leaders clamp down on the need for peace and reiterate it over and over. The number of people who come into these conversations often will have far-reaching benefits, and that is what we hope for. We wish that more leaders will be interested in what's happening in our neighbors. That's not to say, and needless to say, we recognize the many issues that are within the African continent, the sovereign issues that the issues that has to be faced by sovereign nations. We understand that, and we see efforts by leaders across Africa, but let us also be our brother's keeper. And Sudan has no business being in war with the alleged sponsorship of this crisis from outsiders everywhere but Africa. Africa is known to be peaceful. Unfortunately, internally, we are often in conflict, which is the most unfortunate aspect of what's going on in our beautiful continent. Never would you hear that an African nation goes beyond Africa to capture another nation. That's never been us. We've always been peaceful with our neighbors, but what's going on internally, what's happening in Congo is within Congo. What's happening in Sudan is between Sudan, fighting internally. What's happening in Somalia and Somaliland is within Somalia. So these are internal conflicts that we must be very intentional about tackling if we are intentional about the kind of development that will bring African young people at par rather with their international counterparts, while other countries are recording technological innovations in all sectors, medical, agriculture, and other sectors across the economy. We are recording how many conflicts and fights that we have within this beautiful continent that could have produced the best of the best, that often produce the best of the best. Travel outside the African continent and see what our people can do, what the energies that we produce right here in the country. Imagine how we are championing and leading courses in several sectors, in the medical sector, in even technology, even with the limited infrastructure that we grow up with here in the continent. That is the many possibilities that we have in the country, and we allow crisis to thwart this development, especially for young people who now do not have opportunities to attend schools, to get the kind of education that will put them at par with their counterparts. Very unfortunate. But still talking about now Sudan. Sudan's government has now formally condemned Uganda for hosting the RSF leader, of course, calling the meeting an affront to humanity. Khartoum's foreign ministry accused Kampala of violating international law by receiving Dagalo, whose forces are accused of widespread atrocities during the conflict. The sharp diplomatic rebuke highlights growing regional tension over how to resolve the Sudan crisis, while Uganda frames engagement as part of mediation efforts. Sudan's authorities argue that welcoming the paramilitary commander undermines accountability and risks legitimizing the RSF amid ongoing violence. That's unfortunately what to expect in a conflict-ridden area. The Sudanese government, of course, will feel like you shouldn't even host what the RSF leader. Of course, that's what you should expect. However, if you are going to properly mediate, you cannot just talk to one party without talking to the other. I hope the Sudanese government do not now start attacking the peacemaker. I am hoping they also give access and audience to Museveni from Uganda, so that we could see an end to this ongoing violence. Unfortunately, there's an African proverb that says, when the elephants fight, it is the grass that suffer. And in this case, the grass is indeed really suffering. We must see an end to what's going on right now. The RSF and the Sudanese government must come together and see how it ends it. These are factions that are both as formidable. We've seen thousands. This same RSF has thousands of fighters as well, unfortunately. Thousands of fighters, just as much, almost as much as the Sudanese government has. So I just hope that this would not thwart the truce that Museveni is traveling to, having been commissioned by the African Union. We hope that it will not thwart it, and we'll see an end to the ongoing violence happening right there in Sudan. And finally, Ramadan celebrations in Libya have been overshadowed by soaring prices, currency devaluation, and fuel shortages, despite the country's vast oil wealth. Shoppers in Tripoli report rationed goods, empty ATMs, and sharply rising food prices, with cooking oil doubling in cost and gas cylinder refills surging on the black market. The central bank recently devalued the dinar by nearly 15%, a move Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deba admits has placed additional strain on citizens. 15 years after the uprising that toppled Muammar Gaddafi, Libya remains politically divided between rival administrations in the east and west. While security conditions have stabilized somewhat in recent years, economic hardship persists, with declining oil revenues and unsustainable public spending compounding the crisis. UN officials, however, have warned that growing poverty and financial pressures could pose new political and security risks for the country. Again, I did not mention Libya when I was talking about countries that are having internal fights. Ramadan is an important part of the Islamic, for the Muslims rather, a time that is set aside to cleanse the soul and, of course, be prepared to connect better with the Almighty Father. Is a time you would expect, at least there's already fasting, there should be meals and food available. The continued devaluation of the currency and scarce food is a very unfortunate outcome of event. I mean, you can't fast from sunset to sundown and then not still have what to eat. Is unfortunate, and I hope that support and aid also comes to the fasting majority in Libya. I cannot imagine how a country with such vast oil wealth would be suffering like this. Again, I mentioned the many opportunities that are within the African region, and we had mentioned especially in Libya, where we were having deals, energy and petroleum deals with several companies. The Shell of this world, there are several petroleum companies that connected and had deals with Libya. And what I always say is these deals we have, these partnerships must always reflect in the lives of people. They must see dividends of it, and at this point we have not seen dividends. Of course, this is an offset of the conflict that is ongoing within the continent. Very unfortunate right now. I'm hoping that help comes fast for fasting Muslims and for the Ramadan celebration. unfortunately, this is what they have to deal with. Imagine having to deal with all of this. I remember some time ago when we had our currency devalued, our currency scarce in Nigeria, and it was Christmas time. People were unable to travel. The murmurings were very loud, and we lived that reality right here in Nigeria, and it's not something you wish anybody in the world to face. We also have a very concerning trend in Africa where during celebrations we have soaring prices no matter what happens. I read, although funny, I read a report where someone was saying that in spite of the strengthening of the dollar, certain prices of certain commodities have not come down. And you ask yourself, when you want to buy a pair of shoes, they tell you, oh, it's because the dollar is so high. When you want to buy some outfits, they tell you it's because the dollar is so high. The dollar has dropped. Why don't you drop your prices as well? And they tell you, oh, well, it may have dropped here, but it's still expensive and it's volatile. So they are always, we always take advantage of of celebrations to increase prices of commodities. In this case, I don't know if it's an artificial scarcity, but it's something that goes overboard. In other climes, I often talk about how during celebrations, you see Black Fridays where you can shop cheaper. Several trade benefits happen around Christmas and around celebrations, so you're sure to shop cheaper during celebrations. But in Africa, we see soaring prices, and I hope it's not artificial, and I hope the government is positioned to do better in ensuring that fasting Muslims celebrate Ramadan without scarcity, because that right there defeats the entire process of being thankful for what you have and going through the Ramadan season in prayers. You should not have to be bothering about meals afterwards. It's an unfortunate trend. I am hoping above everything that it is settled. And across Africa, I remember the Nigerian competitive federal, that is FCCPC, price regulation body, basically, was talking, or consumer protection body rather, was hammering on Nigerians not to artificially increase the price of goods and services because of the Ramadan season. And guess what? You can no longer buy fruit as cheap as you used to before, because of course you break fast with fruit and now it has become more expensive. And I would have expected that now that there's competition, there is more need for fruit. There will be competition that would basically eventually bring down the prices of goods. But this is what we are facing across board, and I'm hoping in Libya, where it is reported to be so bad that it is overshadowing the beauty of this Ramadan season, I'm hoping something is done and done very fast. But this is where we end today's show of Razep Africa. I hope bringing you everything that was necessary, all the stories trending across this beautiful continent. I hope you are now better informed about what's going on. But this is where we end today's edition. I am Dr. Joy Asaye saying goodbye. Rest assured we'll be back next time for more.
Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on Razep Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.